Every democratic state claims a strict monopoly on the legitimate use of physical and sometimes even lethal force. These armed officers are the literal edge of that monopoly. They are the physical instruments deployed to maintain order and enforce the law. But the moment they are deployed, they carry a dual mandate. The officer executing an arrest is simultaneously the primary guardian of the arrested citizen's civil liberties. This creates a structural paradox. A system must grant its agents the authority to use coercion and violence, without allowing those agents to become an oppressive, legally untouchable class. The mechanism designed to balance this tension is statutory immunity, often referred to as judicial immunity in the context of policing. If an officer faced a personal lawsuit from every person they lawfully arrested or dispersed, the entire law enforcement apparatus would freeze. Immunity protects the state's agents from vexatious, retaliatory litigation. The state provides this protective shield to ensure that its officers can act decisively in highly volatile situations. However, to prevent immunity from degrading into impunity, the protection comes with absolute, non-negotiable conditions. Statutory immunity is never a blanket privilege granted simply by wearing a uniform. The protection relies entirely on a strict good faith test. An officer is only immune when acting within the precise scope of their legal authority, without malice or disproportionate force. To understand how this works in practice, we can map the legal architecture of police powers. It is a structure built upward from constitutional bedrock, reinforced by statutory pillars, and covered by a conditional shield. If an officer steps even slightly outside the precise geometry of this legal structure, the protective shield evaporates. Knowing the exact boundaries of this architecture is what separates a lawful, protected police operation from a severe constitutional violation. Every legitimate police action sits on top of a single foundational layer, the supreme law of the Constitution of India. This foundational slab is Article 21, the right to life and personal liberty. It acts as the ultimate checkpoint for state power. The way courts apply this rule stems directly from the landmark 1978 Supreme Court ruling in Maneka Gandhi v. Union of India. Before 1978, the state could deprive someone of their liberty as long as they followed any formal procedure established by law. Technical legality was enough. The Supreme Court expanded the scope of Article 21, ruling that the procedure itself had to meet a higher qualitative standard. They established a mandatory threefold test. Every procedure must be fair, just, and reasonable. In the field, this means an arrest executed perfectly by the letter of the criminal code is still void if the officer's actions are deemed arbitrary or disproportionate to the situation. Article 21 ensures that before an officer can rely on their statutory authority, their methods must rest firmly on this bedrock of fundamental fairness. Moving one level up from the Constitution, we reach the specific laws enacted by the legislature. This is where officers derive their actual policing powers. In July 2024, India replaced the legacy Criminal Procedure Code with this new statutory layer, the modernized Bharatiya Nagarik Suraksha Sanhita, or BNSS. This flowchart maps out the authority to arrest under Section 35. The power aggressively diverges based on the severity of the alleged offense. For offenses over 7 years, officers can arrest if there is credible risk the suspect might flee. But for lesser offenses, a strict constraint blocks the path. They must issue a notice of appearance. Arrest requires a refusal. The BNSS also weaves in tight internal controls, requiring digital arrest memos, mandatory medical exams before lockup, and guaranteed access to an advocate. The legislature hands the police immense coercive power, but structurally embeds accountability directly into the procedure. To ensure officers can actually perform these duties, the code provides a defensive roof, the Section 197 prior sanction shield. Under Section 197, a court cannot prosecute a public servant for offenses committed while discharging their official duties unless the state government explicitly grants permission. The legal boundary relies on one question: which specific actions accurately qualify as being done in the discharge of official duty? The Devinder Singh test maps this boundary. The shield holds only if there is an inseparable nexus between the action and statutory duty. Independent crimes earn zero protection. Under the Ganeshju case, using disproportionate excess of authority completely shatters this protective nexus. Section 197 repels criminal liability, but only when the officer's actions stay strictly tied to their lawful mandate. Judicial oversight mechanisms actively enforce the boundaries of the Section 197 shield. The Supreme Court issues operational directives that function as literal tripwires for law enforcement on the ground. The D.K. Basu guidelines set non-negotiable custody requirements, including visible identification, 48-hour medical exams, and attested arrest memos. Alongside it, the Arnish Kumar checklist stops mechanical arrests for minor offenses, demanding specific, documented reasoning from the officer before any detention. Magistrates must actively scrutinize remand applications against these lists. If an officer fails the checklist, the magistrate must refuse custody. Missing a single step carries a massive penalty. The good faith defense collapses entirely. Bypassing these mandatory checklists turns what might have been a legally authorized arrest into an unconstitutional act of illegal detention. The officer is stripped of all statutory protections. When an officer shatters their own immunity shield through a procedural or constitutional violation, the legal fallout is severe. In cases of severe abuse, such as custodial violence, the Supreme Court laid down the precedent in Nilabati Behera v. State of Orissa. The court ruled that when an agent of the state violates fundamental rights, like the right to life or freedom from torture, the state cannot use sovereign immunity to defend itself. This routes the violation away from standard protracted civil litigation, triggering a direct public law remedy where the state is ordered to pay compensation via writ jurisdiction. Custodial violations also trigger immediate mandatory oversight protocols outside the police department, requiring magisterial inquiries and immediate notification to the National Human Rights Commission. The state becomes immediately, financially, and legally liable for the constitutional wrongs committed by its officers. Modern forces, like the Telangana Police, operate in an environment where these theoretical principles are enforced by concrete structures: new state police acts, civilian police complaints authorities, and mandatory CCTV coverage inside lockups. This complete architectural model dictates the reality of lawful force. The foundation of fairness, the statutory pillars of procedure, and the boundaries of prior sanction all hold the system together. In 1829, Sir Robert Peel established the foundational principle of modern policing: the police are the public, and the public are the police. Civil rights checklists and constitutional mandates provide the framework that gives police power its legitimacy, effectiveness, and public trust. An accountable police force that honors these rights is not a weaker force, but a more legitimate and trusted instrument of the rule of law.